I've made it all work. Apologies. For the first time in 29 episodes, I have no idea what happened there. I kept pressing the button. You know I'm really good with technology. I pressed the button in the top left-hand corner and it kept just going, yeah, I'm not having any of this. Computer says no. And this is, to all intents and purposes, the equivalent of live television, my friends. And I don't have a production team. I don't have people I can yell at through some sort of talk back and tell them to sort the problem out. I have to just keep pressing things and see if something works. So good evening and welcome to episode 29 of Shelf Analysis here in the Ricochet Book Club. Or if you're watching on the YouTube channel, how are you? How's it going? Is all well? You're possibly watching this in RTE Culture too as well. This is the first of the Wednesday night episodes. The idea being that from now on, the show will go live every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. As to where that happens, we'll have a conversation about that in a minute. That's a chat. So all through the month of June, I've got some fantastic guests lined up for you. First of whom is tonight, and I think we're lined up almost for the rest of the month as well. You're not going to want to miss any one of these episodes, and I know I say that all the time, but that's because I mean it. Firstly, I've been having a conversation in the book club. I might show you because I stuck something up today and maybe you're interested in it. Go and have a look if you are a member of the Ricochet Book Club. I've stuck up a poll today. Initially, tonight was supposed to be the very first night of simulcasting in both the book club and on the YouTube channel as well. Now, it turns out the technology isn't that easy, and I can't have something that allows me to do all of the flashy bangs and whistles and all the cool stuff I do here and simulcast in both. So I may be forced to make a choice. Having said that, YouTube is technically more open and more available to pretty much anybody on the internet. There are a lot of people who don't have Facebook these days or choose to not necessarily engage with it. And one way or the other, if you're in the Ricochet Book Club, you could probably come and watch it on the YouTube channel live anyway. So I'm running a poll at the moment. So far, it's overwhelming in terms of people who would watch the show if it was live on the YouTube channel. And they'd just pop over and watch it there. So I just say, pay attention. That may happen. You can vote in the poll. It is there in the Ricochet Book Club as well. Thanks a million for noticing as well. Yes, it's been a bank holiday weekend. And as a result of which, I could probably do with a shave and my hair's a bit fuzzy. I spent a lot of time painting the back wall in the house. I painted the giant back wall in our backyard. When I say painted, I painted 3/4 of it. It's almost there. It's one of those things that's going to take another week. I did a lot of reading over the weekend as well. I finished this. I think this is going to be well worth your time. I know that this has been rattled on about in here before, not least by Jane Casey when she was on recently. This is Sarah Crosson's new book. If you've read Sarah's YA books, any of them, they are all extraordinary things. They are all award-winning, not least of which Toffee won awards at the Children's Books Ireland Book of the Year Awards recently. This is her first book for adults. It is also written in blank verse. It is called Here is the Beehive. Read this over a few hours over the course of the bank holiday weekend. Broke me in little pieces. I've attempted to reassemble myself ever since. I'm not actually sure I've managed to do a good job of it. It starts off at the very beginning, no spoilers, with a solicitor who answers a phone call. There is a woman on the end of the phone who says that she, as far as she knows, the firm that the main character works for has her husband's will, and her husband has just died. It turns out that her husband, who has just died, was having an affair with the solicitor. And this is the first she has heard of it. And the story tells it from there. It's beautiful. It is not out until August. It is one of those things, get an advance order in for. It's called Here's the Beehive. That is the new and first novel for adults from Sarah Crossan, the former laureate Minogue, who only just recently finished her term as laureate Minogue. A couple of things worth mentioning here. Yes, let's do this one first. I have finally gotten around to picking the books for June in the Ricochet Book Club as well. I know. Two things for you, both of which I've been raving about recently. I'm about 3/4 of the way through the one in the middle. However, I know this is one that's going to start conversations. It is not an easy read by any means. If you're planning on just flicking through something for the weekend, this is not your book. It is called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, Fight for a Human Future at the New Frontier of Power by Shoshana Zuboff. It was one of the large, big, huge books of 2019. You may have seen Barack Obama recommended it in his list at the end of the year, which is unusual given that she goes through his administration for a shortcut more than once in the course of the book. It is about all of that information that you and I give to major global corporations like Google, like Facebook, like Microsoft, Fitbit, anything that you essentially plug into the global surveillance capitalism network, where all that goes, how all of that information is harvested, how money is made from it, and where all of that is going. I feel that at the end of this, that I may never want to be on the internet again, and I may just want to burn down this book club and this YouTube channel, and that you may never hear from me again. So just if that happens, it was because I finished this book and I felt that way about it. Second is a much easier read. It's a debut novel from the fantastic Naoise Dolan. She is a debut Irish author set in Hong Kong. Eva is 22 years old. She goes to Hong Kong for a year, ends up teaching English as a foreign language. She meets Julian, who's a banker. Julian is an expat Brit. Julian, they kind of end up in a sort of relationship with each other, an unusual relationship with each other. Julian goes away for work, and then Eva meets Edith, who is a native Hong Konger, who is a lawyer. And the two of them then end up in a relationship with each other. And then the rest of the story tells out what happens between the three of them. It's exquisitely written. It's really funny in places. It is one of the books of 2020, and that's exciting times. It's by Naoise Dolan. They are the 2 books of the month for June in the Ricochet Book Club. If you want to come in and read along with us, you know you can find us. You may be watching us in there right now. Karina, what is Karina, our houseplant, reading this week? Karina, where are you? Somewhere else. I'm not sure where. I just press a button and it happens. Karina is reading the joint winner of the Booker Prize, Bernardine Evaristo's Girl, Woman, Other. Thank you, Karina's helper, for slightly moving the laptop there. Fair play. Ooh, I can see my copy of the KLF book 2023 in there as well. Okay. Karina, how are you? How's the week been treating you so far? Good? Okay. And are you're just at the beginning of the book from what I can see there. It's just that's below once for yes, twice for no. Okay. And it's because everybody you knew was raving about it and you felt like you had to read that. And that's your read for this week. Okay, thanks, Karina the Houseplant. Always appreciated. And sometimes people pay far more attention to what Karina is reading than to the things that I myself recommend. Sure, where's the fun in that? Our guest tonight, I feel like I've got to apologize in advance for our guest tonight. She was one of the first people that I emailed when all of this started and said, come on, will you come on this and do this and we'll talk about the book? And she said, yeah, no problem. And of course, everybody I asked all said yes, and I'm still in the process of getting all of those people onto the program. It is my absolute pleasure to press this button here and to go, in theory, 3, 2, 1, to Kealan Hughes. Kealan.
Hello. This is quite terrifying because you can see your own face. It's I turn off the camera whenever I'm doing Zooms or whatnot.
You've done Zooms with me. Did you have yourself turned off during those Zooms?
I did, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Too distracting.
Oh, well, obviously. Tell me firstly a little bit about, people will know you from Orchid and the Wasp, which we raved about in the book club some time ago. I know you from being a poet even before then. Tell me a little bit about, firstly, where you are, and then secondly, about the incredible backdrop that you've staged for us tonight. It is a wonderful staged backdrop.
I don't know if you can fully see it in the camera, but they're wrong way. They're my bookshelves, yeah, and they're getting a bit overcrowded. I actually went out of the house into town for the first time today in 3 months. I live in The Hague, in the Netherlands, and I started quarantining on the 2nd of March from lots of specific reasons to do with family members working in biomedical areas. So I haven't been into town, and I went in for one thing, for a pile of books from the American Book Center, and it was blissful. I think I aggressively smiled at everyone in the bookshop.
When you say, let's just have this conversation. When you say you haven't been, you've obviously been out for walks. You've been out to the shop, right? You just haven't gone into the city.
But I wouldn't go into the city. No, exactly. The Dutch lockdown has been, I think people perceive the Netherlands as being more like Sweden or Norway, when in fact it's a little bit more like Britain. And they've had an outcome that's a little bit closer to the UK, a lot closer to the UK than to Ireland, for example. So it is actually busy outside, and it hasn't ever not been, there's been people.
Is that strange for you? Because you and I suppose have had this conversation elsewhere, entirely offline. We've had this conversation, as part of a Zoom we were doing at one stage. Is it unusual then for you to look back and see home and see everything going on here, and then look out the window and see something completely different happening? That must be very strange.
It is. Yeah. It gave me the feels for Ireland. I have to say, I would quite like to be there just now, and I should be there just now. But yeah, I was kind of proud actually of the Irish response and just people being so on board with that. Maybe it has something to do with the colonizer, sense here of maybe just a slight sense of exceptionalism. I'm not sure, and maybe that just the fact that things can collapse so easily in Ireland, and we've had so many collapses. Maybe that helped people kind of get on board, like, okay, this is what we have to do. So I was glad, and I was also glad because I have a lot of vulnerable family members. So it was. I felt like Irish people had my back.
I spoke to a couple of people, and there's no science behind this whatsoever, but more than one person I spoke to said, yeah, there's that thing about, whenever we're part of anything and other people are doing something else, we want to do it better than everyone else. We want to make sure we've done it 10 times better than the other guys. And I think certainly in the early parts of the lockdown here, there was that sense of, we're going to be the absolute best at doing this. And that obviously served a lot of purposes. That was something I got from people.
It was also exciting that reading went up so much in Ireland. It already has a high literacy rate, but that was really exciting.
Yeah, the amount of bookshop owners I've spoken to who have opened up in limited forms over the course of the last few weeks, who maybe just having people to the door, or who are doing deliveries of books, and some of them I know have been working 7-day weeks and literally have just been working flat out over the course of the last few weeks, and that's before bookstores actually reopen here as well. So when bookstores do reopen, this is a good segue. You're going to like this one. When bookstores do reopen, your second novel is going to be turning up. Who would have thought? You were one of those authors, though, as well, who got caught kind of in the middle of all of this, in that the book should have been out by now. And I read my copy months ago. So maybe tell us a little bit about what happened to you over the course of that, realizing the book was going to be bumped slightly and it was going to be moved to a different date, and when you found out about that. And then maybe just tell us a little bit about the book itself.
I was supposed to be out in May, so May 7th. It's going to be out in a few weeks, so pre-order it now, and the weeks will fly. What is time? What are dates?
When it comes to waiting for something you want, it can be a big deal. But yeah,
I think it will. Yeah, so the next couple of weeks, the next few weeks, it's out. That's what I can say. And it's I'm not rushing that along either. I feel just okay. I just felt fine about what happened. I didn't feel hurtful, or it was obviously confusing. I was more worried for my publisher, who are Indian. And for booksellers, because and bookshops, because those businesses are always precarious. So I was nervous about that. Not, for my book, I mean, there's just dozens of books that come out every day. So it's more the kind of mechanism for, and not just the mechanism, but all the reading. Booksellers also need a lot of time to read books, and I don't think they've had much time. They've been fulfilling online orders and all that stuff, and trying to figure out how they can survive. So I wasn't kind of worried about dates shifting about personally, but I am looking forward to having hopefully a reader or two. I have had one sibling read it so far, and he liked it, so that's precious.
I haven't obviously gone full rave on this yet, but I've, as much as I liked Orchid and the Wasp, which I spent a lot of time talking about and adored, I think this is an absolutely fantastic second book. I will be telling people I've started right now telling people that they should be reading The Wild Laughter. Maybe just briefly tell us a little bit about what the book is about and what people can expect if they grab their copy between now and release date.
Sure. So it's set in Roscommon. It's a very different book to Orchid and the Wasp. I'm probably doing my publicists and the sales team just giving them a complete nightmare with this, because it's very different. There is a kind of financial crisis overlap, but in terms of tone and style and the questions that it's asking, they're quite different. So it's set in Roscommon, on a potato farm, and in just at the start of kind of the collapse from 2008 on, and the protagonist, and there's this kind of whiplash, of what Ireland had used to be and what it had been trying to become. And there's that moment, and so the protagonist is called Doherty Black, goes by Hart, and he has to work the farm and look after his ailing father. So he stays at home, the kind of bankrupt farm. And his brother, Cormac, is an entrepreneur, and he is the first person in their family to go to college. And the two brothers have to come together to make a really impossible decision that will affect the future of their family. So that's kind of plot-wise. I can't, unfortunately, there is actually a plot. This is always a shock to me if a plot arrives. But I can't tell any of it because it will, I think, ruin the book.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. I think just give people a little, and then, because I think revealing too much, I think it's best that people find this out as they go along. This is also probably the first time you've actually talked about the book with people watching, isn't it? This is a completely new experience for you.
It's the very first time. The only other time I did something with the book was for your event in Easton's at the end.
Oh, the Christmas party. Yes.
Christmas party.
Yeah.
And I just read from it. So this is my first time trying to say anything about it without ruining it.
Okay, there's going to be a lot of that going on. Okay. People can, of course, order the book in advance from their local favorite independent Irish bookstore. Already, Aoife, if you want to leave a comment below this, you can. If you want to ask Kealan questions, you can. Aoife says, you have bookshelves to date. I love them. I think that implies a kind of generalized love. Do you have, immediately behind you, is there a deck chair with penguin written on it?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I noticed.
Yeah, it's Sea and Sardinia, D.H. Lawrence. But these chairs, I think the copyright on them was never secured or something like this, because I bought this chair for €15 on the street, for King's Day here. The Dutch sell all their things. It's a really fun day. The kids are like, I loved that when I was a kid, any excuse to sell something on the street and then just blow it all on sweets. Mm-hmm. So I picked that up and then came home and thought it would be nice to have a second one. And it would be nice maybe not to have one that's pink that shows the Irish skin, just the white Irish skin, I should say. But anyway, you can't get them. I could sell it and make loads of money.
You possess an illegal deck chair, is what you're saying, which is very you. It's a very uniquely you thing. Okay, tell me a little bit about, as always with shelf analysis for people who are watching this the first time, the kind of hat stand we hang all of this on. It's not just to get to talk to people. It's books that you think that people might want to have a crack at now. It can be new, it can be old, it can be, there's no criteria really for the books in terms of you recommending them. So what have you got? What are you going to start with?
I'm going to start with, I have a pile, I'm sorry, I'll try not to go too long on them. The first is what I'm reading right now. Have you read it?
You can see my face, yes. Minjin needs Pachinko.
I'm only this, oh my God, sorry, this far through.
Okay.
And I have heard a little bit of criticism about the end, but to me, it doesn't really matter what happens because I'm a slow reader and I rarely take on 500-page books, but it is really worth it. It's a kind of sweeping saga that spans, I think, 100 years. And it moves from Korea to Japan, pre and post-war Japan. And there's the historical context of the Japan's colonization of Korea and of the impact of World War II on East Asia in general is all there, and it's all incredibly well researched. I think the author might be a historian, and incredibly, I think it took 25 years to write. I read that somewhere, and so the research is impeccable. But it doesn't read like a history book. It's all conveyed through character and through the detail of one family's journey. I suppose from penury to reasonable success, but or at least financial success. But those details of just everyday life, it feels like it's one detail after the next, and cumulatively you get this kind of massive saga. So it's
yeah, I'd completely agree with you on that. It is the nature of the detail as the story moves on. I know a little bit about the period and the era and the history, but even once the family moves to Japan, it's not really a spoiler. At some point, the family, they are Korean, and then they move to Japan. So despite the fact that they've grown up under Japanese rule, they end up going to Korea, and then the nature of how they're treated as second-class citizens in Japan for all of their lives as well. I ate that book up. I adored it. Again, if people want a nice, solid, giant family 100-year saga to take on, it's hugely recommended from me as well.
Yeah, and it seems to be universally universally loved, which isn't true for all the books that all the books that I like to read.
Okay,
and
then.
For my own books too. But okay, so this next one, it won the Booker. So even if you don't like it, I still have a cause for recommending it. The Sellout by Paul Beatty, I think you pronounce it. It won the Booker in, I think, 2012, and it is really unlike any other book. I was so excited when I read it. I just couldn't believe how well written it was, sentence by sentence, how rich it was. I wasn't surprised to learn that it was written by a poet. And it was the first year that an American book won. The year that the American books were allowed into the Booker. It's set in a fictional town in LA. Sorry, I should just hold it up and then I'll put it down. It's set in a fictional town in LA, where it's black protagonists. I think all of the characters in the book are black, and the black protagonist is attempting to resegregate the town. And it kind of plunges into all of the problems in America, and it's got this irreverence, this mordant kind of wit, but at the same time it exposes the deadly cost of that irreverence, and it's just eviscerating. Every social taboo is tackled, and funny. I think people call it a satire, but I think the author has some issues with the word satire, the genre that implies. But it has pathos, and it's painful but extremely funny.
Yeah, he definitely does, because I asked him that question once. I did an event with him in Dublin a few years back, in Pearse Street Library of all places. Me and Paul Beatty talking about the Sellout in Pearse Street Library. I was lucky enough to be asked to do that. He's incredibly eloquent. People get the chance to see him talk about the book as well. Very laid back, and also quite a dry wit too as well. He's great to watch, and if people ever get the chance to go see him on something, if we ever get to do things again. Book 3. What's book 3?
Okay. This is the last novel I'm going to recommend. Then I'm going to recommend 2 short story collections and 1 poetry collection. So Lanny by Max Porter. People will probably know Grief is the Thing with Feathers, which was a very short and little novella, well, a prose poem even, and it was adapted for the theatre by Enda Walsh with Cillian Murphy starring in it, in which I actually flew over, much to my environmental scientist's despair. Flew over. I'm not allowed to do that anymore. To see, with my parents drove up from Galway to Dublin, and we went and saw it. Like, it was that kind of. Was that good? It was warranted. But the novel itself is still. Sorry, now I'm talking about Grief is the Thing with Feathers.
This is a very broad palette we're talking about here.
Yeah. But it still stands up on its own. Anyway, Max is his own force. And this book, I only suggested in case people loved Grief is the Thing with Feathers, but they haven't gotten around to Lanny. It is very different. It still does these stylistic things, with prose. I think I heard Max say, I'm never going to have 80,000 words of prose in a row, just words in a row. Yeah. And so that's kind of his commitment to what he sees as being the kind of novel that he would want to write. There's a kind of anything magical, or those kind of words don't really do it justice. The atmosphere of Dylan Thomas's Under Milk Wood. It has that kind of there's a village voice and a village sensibility, and also this really, really interesting kind of curtain twitching to the people this fear of the village's future and what the village will become. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's it's all about Brexit and the fear of changing England, and the mourning for the empire, but this Lanny, the title character, goes missing, and so there's this character called I think a Dead Papa Toothwort, and he's this figure that is listening into all the voices of the village and listening into their fears, which kind of accumulatively become about Lanny. Anyway, gorgeous book.
What I love already is that Alice says in comments, I'm praying the recommended books are ones that I've already read. There are so many good recommendations already. Let's see how that pans out. You've got short story collections. I love the recommendation of short story collections, because I made a deliberate effort in recent years to read more short story collections, and it's usually quite rewarding. So what have you got?
Okay, I hope that you haven't read this because I'm jealous if you haven't.
I have not. No, that's fantastic.
This is the US cover, and I think it has a very different UK cover.
Beautiful.
You might be able to do your magic there in the background.
Yeah.
By Nafissa Thompson Spires. I go around if I'm ever in a bookshop and there's an opportunity to take a piece of paper from the bookseller and write a note just to stick on top of it, so that if anyone just buy this. It is so good. And I do think that now is a brilliant moment to try reading short stories if you haven't read them before. A way at an access point is maybe not to read a whole collection in a row, to sit down and read 1 or 2 stories and then just leave it and then come back to them. This collection is very, is varied. They're all realist, and they're all about kind of dorky Black people in America, and it is really, really funny. I love funny writing. It's kind of I won't really recommend a book unless it made me laugh.
Okay.
So some of the stories, for example, there's this brilliant one with 2 mothers who are exchanging these kind of snarky letters in their children's backpacks back and forth about how the other person's daughter should be, behaving. And then there are these really, stories rich with pathos about this teenage girl who really wants to have a really impactful social media post, and she decides that she'll commit suicide, but she really regrets the fact that she won't be around to enjoy all of the endorphins from that inevitably brilliant post. So there's a lot of stuff about class and Black culture and about personhood, in the digital age. She does that so well, and that's quite a new thing that there's only a couple of authors I've seen do that really well.
That sounds fantastic. And what's that called again? Remind us.
That's called Heads of the Colored People by Nafissa Thompson Spires. And it was published in the UK, I think maybe by Picador.
Okay.
Okay.
What else have you got?
The other collection.
Keep squeezing.
Short stories is Dinosaurs on Other Planets by Danielle McLaughlin. Now, I nearly broke up with my mother because the amount of times that I told her to read this book and she still hasn't read it. I think it's because it's short stories, and because people who don't read short stories, they don't know that whether they like them or not. They read for novels, so I can understand, but do read it. She's Irish, and she has a novel coming out next year. She is so good that there's this big prize that Yale University gives out, I think to one author from each genre, drama, fiction, essays, and all over the world, and nobody can enter. So they just pick somebody. Marina Carr, the Irish playwright, won it in the play category a few years ago, and that was she's amazing. I love her, but it was just so amazing to think that this Irish playwright, whose plays are so Irish, they're written phonetically and everything. So to think that she, and it's $200,000 or something, so it changes your life kind of a prize. Danielle won that for fiction last year, and she's only got the 1 book. And it's of short stories. And this is a life-like award. So I don't know if I need to say anything about the stories. I just think they're brilliant. And I think her novel is going to be extraordinary. I'm obviously fearful and will never probably write again once I read it.
I think, just before you finish, just before you go to the poetry collection, I think you're right. I think sometimes people make the mistake of attempting to read short story collections all the way through as if it's a novel. I do the thing that a lot of people do, which is I take it, put it by the bedside. So I'm reading something during the day, there's something downstairs, but I don't bring that to bed. And instead, I'll read maybe 2 stories from whatever short story collection it is I'm reading upstairs. I've just brought last night, I have a 20-year-old copy of Raymond Carver's Where I'm Calling From. And I haven't read Raymond Carver in about 20 years. And I want to see if he's as good as I remember he is. And I'm fully expecting myself to be entirely disillusioned. But the first 2 stories have been magnificent. So I think it's for people that maybe want to get into it, piece by piece, story by story is a good way to go. I think you're right about that. Okay, your final one is a poetry collection, not surprisingly. Tell me.
It's called Life on Mars, and you can see it won the Pulitzer. I still haven't figured out left and right here. By Tracy K. Smith. And it is it's just one of those books that you can reread and reread. The poems it has this celestial kind of vibe. Her father was an engineer on the Hubble telescope and died. And so there are poems about him, but there are also poems that are kind of sci-fi, which doesn't sounds very idiosyncratic and like for a readership of about 3 people, but won the Pulitzer. So that's not the case. And it has this it creates this room for life, for our life, and what we consider to be the most important elements, like love and illness, to be kitsch, and they're put in this museum of obsolescence in the book. And so there's this distance that's created. And it allows for just such a feeling of enlargement, but also feeling, our own scale. So that those poems, there's individual ones that you can just read over and over again, and it's really beautiful, I think, without trying to be, so I reread that all the time.
That's a magnificent set of selections. And again, weirdly, when I started doing these, it feels like about 12 years ago. It's only in the middle of March when we started doing these shows. I wasn't expecting so much poetry to be recommended, but strangely, because people, I don't know, because of the time we're in, because people feel they need something else or something different. I know for some people it was because they wanted to be able to read something that they felt they could connect with immediately. I don't know. The poetry is figured quite a lot in a lot of the books that
I think one of the things is, poetry takes so much time, and it's so slow. It's such a slow form that I think people go to it for a kind of consolation, and that's not to say an emotional consolation or that it offers any kind of enlightenment or resolve or anything, but it does offer you a moment of pause, because that moment of pause has been taken in the writing, and it's literally taken in the form. And so I think that's what it is. There's something very, and in this moment that we're in now, that's so dizzying, and you can't catch up with yourself. I mean, I really spent all day today just watching videos of people speaking, trying to listen, because I can't make sense. I need other people's help to process things. And so I think poetry does some of that. It's taken that time in the past,
I think just to remind people as well, the book is The Wild Laughter. That is your second novel. It is out in a few weeks' time, but of course you can pre-order it in all of the best bookstores anywhere, preferably Irish local ones, because they're the ones you want to do your book buying from at the moment. Thanks a million for joining us tonight. I'm really glad, because when we talked earlier, the bell ringer next door to you was ringing out the bells, and it seemed to be
going 90.
Yeah, which is, I'm sure, is lovely, living next door to the church that you live next to in the bell ringer in The Hague. But Kealan Hughes, it's been lovely to talk to you. And you and I, the one thing we can't talk about tonight is that you and I are both judging for the Dockery Literary Awards. We're both judging the same category this year. I don't know if you want to say anything.
We only had one minor fight.
I know so far there's only been, and it's all very, very well behaved, and it's all fine. But it has been an incredible collection of books. I think that yourself, myself, and Gary German have been asked to make a judgment on it, and people will find out the winner of that over the course of the next few weeks. But listen, thanks a million for joining us tonight, and best of luck with the launch of the book. And I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kealan. Bye. That is Kealan Hughes in The Hague, in the Netherlands. And she has her book out over the course of the next couple of weeks. I think that's it. I think we're done for tonight. There will be another shelf analysis, of course, next week, same time, 7 p.m. As to whether it's live here in the Ricochet Book Club or live on the YouTube channel, that's a movable feast. So maybe keep your eye to my social media channels, and we'll let you know. Just one way or the other, we'll have a fantastic guest for you live next Wednesday night. And that will be at 7 p.m. as per usual. Other than that, have yourself a brilliant week. I'll catch you on the radio on RTE Gold, 10 o'clock every weekday morning, and on RTE Radio 1 this coming Saturday from 2 to 6, if you're not going to ruin and you fancy listening to the radio. Other than that, I'll talk to you online. Thanks for watching.